Hello, and welcome to another edition of Bill and Kipp's Excellent Bible Adventure. We're continuing on through the Gospel of John. I'm Bill Brunson, and this is Kipp McClurg. We're two of the pastors here at Vestavia Hills Methodist, and it's a joy to be able to have you with us as we continue studying, our favorite of the Gospel stories, the Gospel accounts of Jesus' life. Today, we're looking at the 13th and 14th chapters, which is sort of that pivotal moment at the end of Holy Week as Jesus is making that shift into actually being, moving toward the crucifixion. And so today I noticed that I thought maybe we were having snacks, but...
there could be some nachos down in here, but
it appears to be empty.
It is empty. Symbolizing, today, we're looking at the upper room discourse in John where he washes the disciples' feet. And that becomes a symbol for what it means really to be like Jesus and serve like Jesus. So that was a pretty significant job, but not one that the host of the Passover would be performing.
No.
It would be for a servant to do. And
Right.
So they would have taken dusty roads, people wearing sandals at best, coming into a house. So your feet would be dirty. And so they have probably a bowl a bit bigger than this, and water, not the freshest of water, but enough to get the dust off. And they would have had some towels. Now, we just use paper towels because we probably wouldn't use our best towels to wash off people's feet. We'd be cleaning. And then, so that's kind of the picture that we have is this upper room with Jesus and the disciples, and suddenly he surprises them as they come in with this sort of servant moment. Now, you've been to where traditionally people believe that this took place, and I think we have a picture or two of that.
Right. Yeah, this is, of course, later architecture, but this is in the area. If not in this location in Jerusalem, it is close. Oftentimes when you're in Israel, you're told that if it's not right here, it's within 100 yards of right here, so you're very close. And this has actually been a place of worship for, centuries and centuries, believed to be the location of the upper room. And so it was in a space like this that Jesus would have gathered with the disciples. And as you said, as they came into the house, there usually would be a servant at the door to help wash the feet. They didn't really have servants because they were traveling on a budget about like ours for doing this. So they didn't really have a budget.
Very Christ-like of us in our budget.
I'm glad you brought that out, and mentioned that, because I've been thinking it, but no one else has. And so yes, it was in this kind of setting that they would have come in, and maybe there was a discussion of who's gonna help wash feet. Well, I don't want to wash feet. I don't want to wash feet. No one wants to wash feet. Honestly, I wouldn't want to wash feet either.
Yes.
And so they come in to the room, and it says that they're at the table, and this sort of issue is still there because now they're all sitting at the table with dirty feet. Mm-hmm. Now, if you show the next picture, this is inside a home in the village of Sephora, which is... It's only about maybe 3 to 5 miles from Nazareth, and it was almost a Roman-style village, and it's where many people believe the people of Nazareth might have worked if they were artisans, if they were craftsmen. It's possible that Joseph worked there at different times because it's close enough to Nazareth that he might have been able to go there to get work. And the reason I show this is you see the beautiful tile work that had been done. Actually, here you'll see the image of a woman that is made in mosaic tiles. She's called the Lady of Sephora.
So all of this is mosaic.
This is all mosaic tile, but you'll notice there's no tile. I mean, there's no detailed mosaic around the edges
in this kind of U-shape.
In this sort of this U-shape, because the table that would have been in this room and the table that would have been in the upper room would be called a triclinium. It was a U-shaped table that was low to the ground, and you had the decorative area in the middle because that's where you actually could see. Around the edges, people would have reclined on they would have reclined on their right arm and on their left arm. They reclined on their left arm and they would have eaten with their right hand. And so in the seating around this table, and based off of what we know from the gospel story, this end spot, sitting down here at this very end, would have been Judas. That's the place of ultimate honor at the table. Next to Judas would have been Jesus. He's the host, always in the second spot. And the reason that's the place of ultimate honor is the host who's laying on his left arm eating, and the person next to him laying on his left arm eating, you can have conversation with each other. The host is leaning towards you almost. And so it is that Judas and Jesus could have theoretically had private conversations without anyone else at the table really knowing what they were saying if they wanted to. And then next to Jesus on this side is John. Because at one point in the gospel story, John leans toward Jesus, leans into Jesus to ask a question. We'll get to that later. But it's believed that all around the table, in a typical triclinium seating, every spot is lower because you're moving away from the host. Every spot is lower all the way around the table until you get to that end. And at that end, you have what was known as the servant spot. You weren't really a servant. You were just the lowest of the people. You remember Jesus said, when he tells the parable about this, about the parable of the dinner party, he said, don't take one of these seats and be told, hey, you need to move on around the table. He says, take the lowest seat. So somebody could theoretically look at you and go, you need to move on up a little bit. Well, many scholars think that you go Judas, Jesus, John. They don't really know the lineup around the table, but many believe that in that last seat, for whatever reason, maybe thinking that he would be told to move on up, in the last seat is Peter, in the servant seat. And typically in front of the servant seat, there would be a bowl on the table that the servant that lowest person might pick up and bring so someone could wash their hands off in or something like that. That's the lowest spot. But Peter's not willing to wash feet, even though he's in the servant seat. No one around the table's willing to wash feet, not John, not Judas. And so, as you mentioned, we get to a point in the meal, right as the meal's starting, when everybody still has dirty feet, that Jesus himself gets up and goes and actually washes feet. He takes off his outer robe, he wraps himself in a towel so that he doesn't get dirty, and he fills a bowl with water, and he goes around the table, and the first person he comes to is the lowest person on the table, it seems. He comes to Peter.
So Peter would be at the start of the line, except on the other side.
Yeah.
And he says, Peter is appalled. You can't. I mean, this is reversal of roles here.
Yeah.
You can't wash my feet.
Right. Well, and I've always thought Peter probably feels like I got caught. I mean, I should be doing this. Somebody should be doing this. And maybe it's this convicting moment of Peter of, oh yeah, he says we're not supposed to worry about this kind of stuff.
But I am sitting here, and probably I have a job I ought to be doing.
Yeah, and here he is with a bowl and water. Uh-oh.
So Jesus' response to him really reflects, I think, what the disciples had struggled all along to get. They argued, remember James and John, who's going to sit the left and the right. They even got in one of the Gospels, got their mother involved.
Got their mom to ask.
Involved in the question of.
Well, and on the way to the dinner, the disciples are arguing among themselves, who's the greatest?
Yeah.
Trying
to figure out the seating arrangement.
Right.
But Jesus makes it very clear that, hey, if you're going to follow me, it's not the normal path. It's the path of leadership, of servant leadership. To lead is to serve, and is to be the lowest.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes really, for the church, the model of what it means to be a leader.
Right.
You and I serve on boards where we try to help people into pastoral ministry, and one of the characteristics we look for is, can that person actually take on the nature of a servant?
Yeah.
And if someone comes in and has an attitude of, I am in charge, well, that's a huge red flag. And I mean, we try to work with people to kind of unlearn that.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter certainly struggled because he at times really wanted to be in those places, and James and John obviously struggled, and all the other ones did as well.
Right. I mean, I think it's human nature to want the accolade. It's human nature to want the position. It's human nature to want those things. And here Jesus is saying, you take the lowest seat. Here Jesus is saying, the greatest among you is the servant of all. And that's anti the nature, our human nature. But it's our goal as disciples is to be like the one who would get up from the table where he is the host and will wrap himself in a towel and wash the dirty, dusty feet of his disciples.
And it goes back to John the Baptist, where he says, I must become less so that he can become more.
Mm-hmm.
And that model is really what the disciples ultimately have to adopt too.
Oh, absolutely.
But they're getting there. So we're in chapter 13 and 14. We have a lot of questions and hints that there's going to be a betrayal, and then we have this moment of these hints, and then we get into 14, which is typically the passage, I would say the most common passage that happens at a funeral.
Right.
You do not let your heart be troubled.
You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions or dwelling places or rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but what fascinates me about the placement of this is it's right after he says, oh, by the way, y'all are going to betray me and it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about it.
Right.
I've got a place for you and you can come meet me. Now, there are some places, because I grew up on some good camp meeting music. And so, my favorite from childhood, just build my mansion next door to Jesus and tell the angels I'm a-coming on home. It doesn't matter who lives around me, just so my mansion sits near the throne. Now, that does not reflect servant leadership, nor is it good singing.
Because if you're going to sing like that in Glory Land, I'm hoping my mansion is like way down the street and soundproof.
Yeah, and I was adding a little bit of flavor to that.
You were
for the record.
Well, I mean, all those great songs, that we want a mansion that's a gold one and silver line,
oh,
those kind of things, and even that great one that is not great theology. Just build me a cabin in the corner of Glory Land. I like that one.
Yeah, that became a real strain of music that kept going. But really, the word there has a lot of different meanings. And probably from my understanding, the better interpretation is in my house is many rooms, because you go back to the structures that were made. They're mostly made out of dirt, and there's some wood there and rock and that kind of thing. But when you added another room to it, let's just say your child got married, you would just build another room. And so you have this picture of this, if you've ever been to a country house that just kept growing and growing and growing, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. There's another room over here and there's another room over here. That's kind of the picture, that I'm going to my Father's house and I'm going to build you a place. And so just know that you're going to be welcome when you get there.
Well, you can look in the Middle Eastern culture still in Israel and in the Palestinian areas. They still do this. When you get engaged, you begin the process of adding on a room. One of the first people I met in Israel was a Palestinian Christian that said that every time one of the members of the family get married, you either add on a room or you add on a floor, kind of thing, because you're constantly building onto the same house. You can look in Capernaum. You can look at the footings of the home of Simon Peter, and Peter's house there, which probably belonged to his mother-in-law and father-in-law originally. You can see where it looks like they've added on a room here and there when there's been weddings and all that along the way. And so that concept of that Jesus is going to prepare a place for us, it's also that idea that we don't know when it'll be ready. And so we don't know when he's going to have it ready for us to come and join him. And it also is that ultimately you switch over to John and the Revelation, that idea of the bride of Christ going to live with Christ, that ultimate idea that he is building on the room for his bride, the church, to come and to live with him in his Father's house.
So you're getting this picture of really life in Palestine at that time, family life, and how it sort of works. But the bigger picture here is that there's going to be some difficult times for the disciples. The book of the Revelation certainly talks about there's going to be some difficult times for those that follow Jesus.
Right.
They're about to go through a difficult week here. There's going to be some denials. But don't be troubled, because at the end of the day, when it's all over, I'm building a place for you. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be with me. And what an incredible, and I think that's why it becomes that sort of quintessential passage that people ask for in funerals, because there's a sense of comfort that no matter what we've been through, God's got us a place.
Right, right.
God is waiting for us and looking forward to us. So I guess for all of us, no matter what we're facing in life, no matter where we are in life, we know at the end of the day, we'll spend our days with Jesus.
What a blessing.